You can see me in this photo, but you never see that photo because this one is so great. Andy can speak to this. This is another photographer shot this picture, but Andy was the one pressing the trigger for a system that we used. It does speak to the teamwork aspect of things.
I love seeing you under the basket right there. I didn't even notice that until today.
My picture is nice. Like when I first shot it, I knew I had it and I was like excited about it, but it's not as good as this one by any stretch. Yeah. The crowd that you do see the clock, the people's faith, the Utah fan, and it was just a crazy moment in NBA history right here.
Then you are in Australia right now.
You're talking NBA basketball. You're talking great teams. You're talking great individual players.
Takes it off, and there's number 23, and of course Johnny goes nuts.
So we're all getting goosebumps thinking about it now.
I just tried to go out there and play my game.
I have no idea what you're talking about, Adam. I don't like anybody. I'm not a people person.
Strand, you make the pass. Yes. Christian, can you catch the ball? Yes.
All the stars were aligned and all the muscles fired at the right time, and I was able to get off the ground and throw one down.
I was saving that as a surprise for you.
And now, introducing your host for In All Airness, Adam Ryan.
Welcome to episode 108. Thanks for joining me. I'm excited to welcome senior NBA photographers Andrew Bernstein and Nathaniel Butler. This is the audio of our Zoom recording from May 2020. I've since uploaded the video to YouTube, which includes each of the iconic photos that Andy and Nat discuss herein. There is a link to the video in the description of this episode on your podcast player. We cover Michael Jordan's final shot and the moments thereafter from the 1998 finals, Magic Johnson's junior skyhook at Boston Garden from the 1987 finals, Jordan's locker room celebration with his late father James from the 1991 finals, and a stunning breakaway slam dunk from the late Kobe Bryant circa 2000. Show notes for this episode and access to a huge archive of past episodes are available at inallairness.com. Now, on to the show. My guests today have photographed some of the most iconic moments in basketball history. They both started working for the NBA in the mid-1980s and continue to document the league's history to this day. Andrew Bernstein and Nathaniel Butler, thanks for joining me.
Absolutely.
Thanks for having us, Adam.
It's a pleasure to have you both on. Just for some context, Andy, you previously guested on the podcast going back a couple of years now. It was a great conversation that we had about your history in photography and working with the NBA. But Nat, do you mind just detailing, if my research is correct, you've been at every NBA All-Star game and NBA Finals since 1986. Is that correct?
Yes, every one since 86. I started when I was 13. They had no labor laws then.
I was going to say, you look almost too young to be able to do that. But
I don't know.
When do you first remember meeting one another? Is there a story behind your first meeting? There's a photo that I'd like to show in a moment, which I've found online, I believe, through the B&H photo. Perhaps there's a great photo that I hope to share in just a moment.
God help us. I don't remember that initial meeting, Nat. Was it... It was through Terry Lyons, our dear friend. I know that. He made the intro.
It's funny. I don't remember specifically. There you go. But I think it would have to have been 86 All-Star in Dallas.
Dallas. Yeah, I think you're right. I think it was.
And then got to know each other better during 86 finals, right? Because it's not as hectic, and then you have an off day between games or something. And that's when our friendship first started.
Who was in the 86 finals?
Boston and Houston?
Boston.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
What's the story behind this photo here? Can you recall actually what was happening on that day, or that's just one that was taken in amongst a whole flurry of things?
That's a lot of years ago.
Yeah, I don't remember what was happening that day. I mean, wearing one of the original NBA shirts, that's for sure. It looked like a locker room in the background or something, but it was some shoot that we were doing.
That's a great photo. How do you feel looking back on it all these years on?
Nice to have been young once, right, Nat?
That's a lot of games between the two of us since that photo. That's for sure.
Yeah.
That's a fantastic one.
Purely partners in crime. I mean, we still are, but it was just Nat and I for a long time. I mean, really, until we had, I don't even know who the next person up was. Jesse came along much later, but maybe I started bringing Barry or something, or Garrett. But, Nat and I would just do all these big events, just the two of us, running around like idiots with, didn't know which end was up.
And obviously the whole digital age has come to be. It's a completely different scenario between how things started back in the 1980s when you were doing things on film. I believe we did chat about it, Andy, when you guested on my podcast a few years ago. But Nat, when was the approximate time that you would have converted to be all digital? I know that Andy tried to hold off for as long as possible, if my memory serves. When did you change over to let the digital age come in?
You know what? Same with me, because I loved how the film looked. I love that we shot with the Hasselblad, the 2.25. It just mechanically, it's a beautiful camera. The different lenses were beautiful. The film was beautiful, but the needs started changing, and people needed the material. You couldn't shoot a game and wait 3 hours at the lab to get the film processed. Times were changing, but it was 2003, and that was a big deal because of the class of 2003 with, LeBron, Wade, Melo. Like, that was sort of the next generation of all these young stars. So through the course of that season, we started, switching to digital. The original digital stuff was not great quality, so we had to I didn't want to go backwards in quality either. Right. But by then, it was starting to equal film.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, the original digital cameras were like gigantic, and they weighed, I don't know what they weighed, 15 pounds. And the files were tiny and terrible. I didn't honestly believe that it was ever going to catch on, to be honest with you. You talk about the 2.25. I mean, this guy right here, my buddy, was truly one of the, if not the best, one of the best of the Hasselblad guys. I never really got the hang of it, honestly. I mean, I was good with it with remotes, but the handheld thing, I just could never really feel comfortable with it, honestly. And that, I think from day one, you did.
I just loved it right from the jump.
Yep.
In terms of current day, as far as what we've been happening during this really strange time that we're living in at the moment, just yesterday, the 10-part docuseries, The Last Dance from ESPN, concluded, and clearly your respective lives behind the lens are reflected in countless moments throughout those 10 episodes. It was an incredible series. I just absolutely loved it. I'd love to know what your respective thoughts are on that, and is there a particular moment or a takeaway from any episode that particularly stood out to you above all others?
You want to go, Nat, or you want me?
No, go ahead. Go ahead, start.
Well, I think what stood out the most was just how epic that run was. I mean, we were there from the beginning. Nat and I shot Michael Jordan, as a rookie. So we were around his whole career. But that run of 6 championships in 8 years, man, it was just something else. And then, it's kind of fun to see each other and all our friends and all the people we've worked with, in front of the camera, behind the camera, throughout the series. That's been great. But the one moment that I really want to point to is really the last shot. I mean, the last shot just kind of summed up everything for me in terms of teamwork, all of us, really going for one goal, which was to get that definitive picture, which, of course, now lives on. I mean, I don't think we knew at the time the significance of it being the last picture of The Last Dance, but that's what it's taken on, and I'm happy to have been part of that.
Similarly, in the moment, not to equate yourself with one of the athletes, but you're in the moment, so you don't really have time to think about things. Yeah. You're working hard and trying to do your job, and don't really allow yourself to get caught up in the moment. You can't be caught up in the moment. You have to keep doing your job. And it is fun 20 some years later to look back at things, because you have a lot of memories. We have a lot of friendships with team personnel, league personnel over the years. And I've loved it just like everyone else, waiting for the Sunday night to look forward to watching it. It's been special for me because I've been watching with my two boys because they were too young to remember that. Just as a parent, as a basketball fan, again, like everyone else sitting on the couch watching it, it's been an awesome experience.
Yeah, it's great to hear your memories. Thank you both for sharing them. You should be able to see on the screen that, Andy, this is one of the photos that you sent through to me. Now, I believe, Nat, you were sitting on the opposite baseline, closest to Jordan.
You can see me in this photo. I have a shot of him with the ball right on his hands. You see the shot, but you never see that photo because this one is so great. Andy can speak to this. This is another photographer shot this picture, but Andy was the one pressing the trigger for a system that we used, and it does speak to the teamwork aspect of things.
Yeah. I love seeing you under the basket right there. I didn't even notice that until I looked at it today.
My picture is nice. Like when I first shot it, I knew I had it, and I was excited about it, but it's not as good as this one by any stretch because of
it tells a story. Yeah.
The crowd that you do see the clock, the people's faith, the Utah fan, and it was just a crazy moment in NBA history right here.
Yeah. I believe this was taken by the Orlando Magic photographer, Fernando Medina. And also I saw you recently share it, Andy, and I think you had the hashtag teamwork. So as Nat alluded to there, what was involved behind getting this photo to happen in terms of your role in the photo as well? And then we'll get to another photo shortly, which shows Jordan celebrating just moments after the final buzzer there that Nat took.
Yeah, well, not meaning to get like too photo technical about it, but we back in the day, and we still actually employ this system of these radio units that are attached to cameras that are remote cameras. So if you look really closely at this picture in the backboard, you'll see a bunch of cameras there, and those are all controlled through this system. And the cameras are all tied in to a single strobe system, which are these giant flashes that are up in the ceiling in the catwalk. And only one photographer can be on one strobe system at a time because you would blow the strobes. They need 4 seconds to recycle, so you can only get one picture every 4 seconds. You can't be, shooting with somebody else because it's a dedicated system. We worked with some tech guys to develop this multi-camera system that would fire these cameras at the same time with the same strobe burst. And in those days, we actually not only used these stationary remote cameras that were placed all over the arena, but we used human being remotes. We call them human drones. And Fernando happened to be one of those, the two that were on my system, the other one being Scott Cunningham, who was at an elevated angle at midcourt, so that they would compose and they would focus, follow the action. The only thing they wouldn't do would actually trigger the camera. They would not push the trigger button to take the picture. I had to do that for them, right, because of the strobe system. So when I pushed this auxiliary button, this little button next to my shutter button, my camera would go off, right? All the remotes would go off, plus the human drone remote guys would go off. So you're hoping that you get a picture like this. Now, the year before, I don't know if you remember that, but we kind of screwed up, and it wasn't you, but it was the photographer who remained nameless who was supposed to get a picture like this at the finals and didn't. And our boss called him out at this finals and said, if this ever happens again, you got to be ready, right? So he was ready. Very long story short, I was in the corner to the left of Tony Kukoc over here, the very, very edge of the frame. And I'm following Michael as the play unfolded, and I can see Byron Russell stumble. And just as Michael elevated, Tony Kukoc gets in my way. So I don't see Michael anymore, but I saw the bottom of his feet. And I saw him elevate, and I knew I had to bang the button. I had no picture. My picture was of Tony Kukoc's back. But I knew that the two human drone guys had, at least had the potential of getting the picture, and that's how this picture was made.
Unbelievable. It's crazy to hear what happens behind the scenes for that to actually take place. And and come to be such an iconic photo. Your boss that you're referring to, I assume, is the late, great David Stern?
No, our photos boss, Carmen Romanelli.
Oh, okay. Radio.
I don't even know if David Stern knew we were there at the time, Nat. But no. But Carmen ran NBA photos and now is the head of license. Truly a group effort.
What are your memories, Nat, of this moment unfolding?
You know what? You knew Michael was going to take the shot. And then in that picture we just looked at, you can see me shooting. I'm looking down, looking through the Hasselblad. You know, in basketball, there's a lot of moving parts. Yeah. And I had him lined up, stayed right on him. You want the ball releasing, the clock in the background. And I was waiting for a car to clear a little because he was a big body that was in front of me, and he slid a little to the left. And then I took one frame. Yeah. And at the time, I was thrilled. I loved it. And then, like I said earlier, I saw this one. I was like, wow, that's much better. And the elevated shot that Scott had, people don't see a lot. Yeah. But it's an awesome moment as well. It is cool to how it speaks to the team effort.
Yeah, unbelievable. So thankfully, Tony Kukoc and also Antoine Carr didn't quite put the kibosh on the photo. Never happening. So that's good to hear. How about this photo here, Nat, that hopefully you'll be able to see on the screen? This is one that you sent me ahead of our chat today. Can you talk us through just being right there at the moment to capture that moment there as Jordan's holding up the 6 fingers for the 6 titles?
After Michael hit that shot that we were just talking about, Utah gets the ball. They called a timeout. John Stockton had a really good look at a three. Like he probably, whatever, I'm not a big stat guy, but 40, 50% of the time he nails that. He missed it. It's just bedlam. So at that time, we just run out on the court, and I was fortunate enough to get Michael. He didn't do it for a long time, but arms up, giving the sixth sign.
It's crazy that there's no TV guy. Like, he must have been next to you or something.
We always try not to get in front of the TV guys and get next to them. I'm assuming he's next to me. Huh. Sort of one of my favorite shots because it says it all, you know. Yeah. And that was his last hurrah there.
Yeah.
Remarkable. What did you do, Andy, after the final buzzer went? What were your motions in the following seconds? Do you recall?
I don't remember, honestly. I know I ran out on the court. I haven't seen any of my photos from the court, like, ever, so I don't know. Maybe stuff didn't work. You know, you're depending on a radio to trigger strobes.
It was crazy because it brought back memories watching the doc, because after they win, they do the trophy and we're shooting all that stuff. They went into the locker room for a little bit, which we were back there and got some really nice moments. They never showered or never took off their jerseys, and they showed that last night in the doc. They hopped on the bus. I thought it was very cool, by the way, Karl Malone getting on the bus.
Yeah.
Congratulate them, how difficult that must have been for him.
Yeah, I don't remember that happening.
Crazy show of sportsmanship. I remember being on the bus. Then I got off the bus to go break down all these cameras. You guys continued on with Michael up to his suite. And they showed like playing the piano and singing and then and it's unbelievable. He's still in his jersey. He's still got the champagne-soaked jersey and T-shirt on.
It's crazy they didn't take a shower. Crazy. It's also crazy that they didn't fly back to Chicago that night because the game ended early. Michael had that line when he comes out of the arena saying, "Oh, it's still light out. I could play some golf now or something."
Well, I think you have a little post-game activities planned. Yeah. You don't want to get right on the plane. You want to enjoy that as long as you can.
Yeah, yeah.
Can you talk to that moment up in that hotel room, Andy? Because in the background of those shots, you can see yourself there taking photos.
Yeah.
Did that sort of bring back some great memories for you?
Yes and no. Our boss at the time, Carmen, said, you got to go to the hotel and just find where they are. You know, we didn't know if they're going to be, they had a ballroom or it's going to be on their suite level or whatever. So I get over there and I don't know how I found out, but I knew that to go up to this one floor, which they had the whole floor. And once I get off the elevator, it literally reminded me of being back in college, you know, like dorm, crazy party central, like champagne bottles everywhere. This is a true story. The first room I walk into, it's got Dennis Rodman and Carmen Electra in there, drinking and having a great time. This is the craziest scene ever. And then I'm hearing a lot of commotion down the hall in the presidential suite, and I go in there, and it's packed. Michael's in there sitting at the piano, big stogie, And Michael Jordan, I think, is really great at a lot of things, but he does not know how to play the piano. And he knew he didn't know how to play the piano, but it was just such a moment. It's funny in the documentary how he joked about at the practice about having a piano in his suite.
Right. He was practicing that Gatorade song. He wanted to play that one Gatorade song. But everybody wanted to be like Mike.
Be like Mike, yeah.
Could have been the one thing he knew how to play.
Yeah, so that was all a great memory, Adam, and the pictures were great, and it was a fun night, and I was able to kind of take it in a little bit. I was literally next to the greatest sports photographer of all time, Walter Yost, who was in there, like right next to me. That was amazing. But fast forward the next day, I caught pneumonia, and I was sick for 2 weeks.
Oh, wow.
Oh, I didn't know that.
I ran out of the arena soaking wet, right? And you see me in the dock, I got the towel around me. But it was like a little bit of a cool evening, and I had to run to the hotel, which was probably 10 blocks away with my gear. Probably didn't get to sleep until maybe I didn't even go to bed at all. But I got back to L.A. I had like 102 fever. I was in bed for 2 weeks.
Oh, wow. That's not good. It wasn't some bad pizza that you ate by any chance, was it?
No, it was just, heat of the battle, so to speak.
And another photo, Nat, that you sent me ahead of our chat today. Hopefully this will pop up. It's from the 1987 NBA Finals. And it's the iconic Junior Skyhook.
Junior, yeah.
The tremendous photo here of Magic in amongst the trio of Hall of Famers. Bird, Parrish, McHale. Can you please talk us through this great black and white photo, which is obviously one of your favorites, Nat?
You know what? That, again, a little bit of luck never hurts, being on that side of the court, being able to get that moment. But this speaks to what we were talking about earlier about not digital. This was film. You shoot it. I remember he hit it. There was 2 seconds left and pretty much like ran off the court right after he hit it. And you hope that you get the shot. We don't know. We break down. I was shooting black and white because in those days, a lot of newspapers didn't even use color. Andy was shooting on strobes. We're both shooting for the league to document the history, but people had different needs. A lot of newspapers and NBA publications just ran black and white.
Yeah.
But after the game, we run back to the hotel. I'm shaking up the canisters and developing film in the hotel. You're holding it up, and I was like, yeah, we got it.
Did you shoot a motor drive sequence?
You know what? It's funny. I don't remember. I think in those days, my cameras were so old, like the motor was too slow.
Right.
Those MD-12.
Yeah.
And I was just, one frame, and that was it. And thankfully, it's cool. Like you look at it, it's 4 Hall of Famers there,
Yeah.
And even Magic at one time made a comment that it was one of his favorite shots, which made me feel good. Unlike Andy, I didn't see the Lakers much being on the East Coast. That was Game 4. The Lakers won in 6 that year.
Yeah.
Fantastic photo. Absolutely fantastic.
Such an old-time picture, too. I mean, you see the whole kind of depth of Boston Garden with the overhanging balconies and all that stuff. Remember?
Right.
I was wondering if there was a reason for the black and white, but it just looks so great in black and white. So I think it was obviously a fantastic choice. And the next photo I'd love to share, this is a great one that Andy, that you sent through ahead of time today, and I'll open it up in a moment. It's from the 1991 NBA Finals. The iconic photo of Jordan cradling the NBA championship trophy with his late father, James, at his side. We did talk, I believe, a little bit about this when you guested on the podcast a few years ago, but I'd certainly love to hear your recollections of how this one came to be as well. Just another iconic photo.
Well, this is, has taken on a lot of significance in a lot of ways. It's Michael's first championship, and his dad being in the photo, and we all know what happened to his dad, especially from watching Michael's reaction during the last dance. And it was just a crazy, chaotic moment. Back in the day, the network used to do the trophy presentation to the winning team in the visiting locker room or in the home locker room. They didn't do it on the court. So the locker room at the Forum was like a glorified closet, and all hell was breaking loose in there. I mean, it was insane. Champagne's flying everywhere. There's all kinds of people and their family members, media, and they're trying to do this trophy presentation like in this little like corner of the locker room. The only vantage point I could get and see anything was I jumped up on bridge table in the middle of the room so I could at least see, what was going on. All of a sudden they stopped the trophy presentation. They went to commercial, and then they wanted to get Michael for a one-on-one interview live, but they couldn't find him, and everyone's desperately looking for him. And I don't know, some sixth sense just said, look to your left for some reason. I remember it just turned to my left, and boom, there he was in this locker, and I just kneeled down and banged off a few frames. Nat, you're probably in this picture in the reflection somewhere.
Right.
And it was super cool to see it in the documentary because they have this moment, but sort of around a little bit. So you could actually see me in the ball, like with the flash going off. This is crazy. I had never seen that footage before. So that was awesome.
How about you, Nat? What do you recall about being in amongst all this mayhem that was going on at the time in 1991?
You know what? To Andy's point, it is very chaotic, and you have a job to do. You have to document it, but you have to give people space, and there's TV cameras in there, and they're usually the priority. But I was right on the other side. There was a moment of him alone with the trophy. His mom was in there as well. It's pretty special. Like you said, you have the opportunity to look back over time and realize that we were pretty fortunate to be able to document that for sure.
Yeah. I mean, that was the beginning of the last dance.
Remarkable. It's just fantastic to have this opportunity with you both to share this. Thanks again for your time. Just another photo or two that I may have before we sort of put a bow on this conversation. It's been great to speak with you both. The only one we haven't yet spoken about, and this is a photo of the late, great Kobe Bryant that, Andy, that you sent through. This one here is an incredible one where he's you've got it right up close here as he's about to throw down a monster dunk.
Well, people probably don't know or maybe don't remember as much, but the young Kobe, like the pre-Mamba, was like a dunking machine. I mean, that kid would just, you'd probably get, 5 or 6 dunks a game out of him. Not all of them as spectacular, as this one turned out to be. But this is probably the first year at Staples Center, I think. So it's probably the 99-2000 season. It's against New Jersey. It was a regular season game. One of the things Nat and I would always set up would be a Hasselblad camera with a wide-angle lens through the glass of the backboard. And this happened to be shot with that. And you can just see the difference. I mean, I don't think you have to be a photographer to really see how deep this picture is and how it just is a different look than a digital 35 millimeter picture. I don't know. It's hard to describe.
It's crazy beautiful to freeze that moment.
Yeah.
You realize how hard he's throwing it. It's frozen. The bead of sweat on his face, his expression. That's a timeless classic.
Crazy.
Photo.
And, what was crazy too, Adam, was that, we were shooting film. So obviously your roll of film has a finite number. And these Hasselblads, you could only get film that shot 24 frames. Sometimes it was 12, but we had these film backs that shot 24 frames. And you had to sort of remember in your head how many remote pictures you took because you couldn't change film until the quarter break. End of first quarter, halftime, end of third quarter. You just can't be bringing ladders out there, during a timeout and stuff to change film. Sometimes we couldn't change film at all. Some arenas in the catwalk, for example, you set the camera up and you had 24 shots. That's all you got because they wouldn't let you up in the catwalk during the game or let your assistant up there, So, that was something that we always had to be very conscious of. And going back to the Jordan last second shot, I was thinking about that today, that who knows where I was on the film counter at that point. Could have been the 36th shot for all I know. Same with you, Nat. I mean, you were probably shooting 120 backs or 220 backs maybe.
Yeah, no, I was always conscious. You had to be conscious of the count. And most of my arenas, you couldn't change. It was 24 for the entire game.
Yeah, they wouldn't even let you go out at halftime.
No. Well worth it. You get a shot like that, well worth it.
Yeah, for sure.
Unbelievable. Just a remarkable array of photos that we've had a chance to chat about today, and thank you very much, both of you, for your time. Would you like to just briefly talk, Andy, to your book that you released, Mamba Mentality? I'd love for you just to briefly talk about the involvement that you had with of course, Kobe, and your very close relationship that you had. Do you mind just talking about that for just a moment?
Yeah, no, of course. No, I was very, very fortunate to be the Lakers photographer when he was a rookie in 96. And by then, I'd been in the league for 13 years. So within the organization, I had built some trust and a relationship, with Pat Riley and Magic and Mitch Kupchak and Jerry West and, everybody. So he had been, I guess, following my photos as a kid, as well as Nat's photos, a lot of people's photos, because he was just, a student of the game. So he said he knew who I was. He recognized my pictures. And we just hit it off from the beginning. He was a very, very unique kid at 18 years old, very focused and driven and incredibly curious about everything all the time. It's just a unique opportunity for a photographer to have one subject, whether it's, a musician or an athlete, it doesn't matter, a politician, but to have that subject in front of your lens for 20 years, is just amazing. And, now I think it's impossible almost for one athlete to be with one team for 20 years, the way everything is structured with the money and all that. But, I was very lucky to have taken his first professional picture as a Laker, his last, and, a lot of them in between. He got to his retirement year, after All-Star break, I just realized that there was so much material that had not been published, and that I just felt the need to get a lot of that out. And I talked with him and his marketing team about doing just like sort of a greatest hits kind of book, which he didn't want to do. He wanted to do a book with me, but he wanted it to be a book where he teaches about what it really meant to be the Mamba and break his own game down and his process and his craft and everything he put into becoming who he was. It was a gift. I mean, it was a real gift from him to allow me to be able to illustrate that with my pictures. And, what's just amazing now is the book is continued now, with his passing, to be a bridge and to be a connection between those of us who knew him and were around him, but even, the young generation and fans who were great fans of his and now trying to teach their kids about him. And very thankful that we had the opportunity to do the book together, and that now it sort of lives on and preserves his legacy.
Yeah, beautifully said. And also you were able to get Kobe on your podcast too, Legends of Sport.
Yeah.
Was it a two-part? I think it was a two-part episode.
No, the one with Magic was 2 parts.
Oh, Magic was 2 parts. So you had Kobe on the show.
Great. He was very generous with that, and he was just incredible. And he knew that I was trying to build this Legends of Sport platform with the podcast, and to have him on talking about our book and then, about his career, was just really, really helped me. And it just goes to show how generous a person he was. He wasn't really financially or anything getting anything out of the book, but he saw it as a great vehicle to connect with his fans, but also to help me. And it really did.
Yeah, that's wonderful. And maybe just one last question for you, Nat, before we do wrap things up, if you don't mind. You were mostly based on the East Coast as far as your photography years over the decades. How was it covering maybe the New York Knicks? I know you're a New York fan and you attended St. John's. What was it like to cover those Knicks and sort of see some of the struggles they had against those epic matchups in the playoffs with the Bulls, and just that whole 1990s where the Knicks were such a fascinating team to watch in the many incarnations that they had?
it was really special. And one thing about this Jordan doc that some of the younger people will now realize is, yes, the Bulls won 6 titles, but it was not easy. Like, they didn't roll over people. Like, they had battles against, they had lost to Detroit. They finally beat Detroit. But they had battles. The Knicks had winning. The Knicks were up 2-0. They'd come back, win a series. Those Indiana teams were really good. There's a fine line. Utah, Michael hits that shot against Utah. They won by 2 points, I think. It wasn't like they were blowing people out and sweeping. And it's cool because you realize then you have more of an appreciation because of how difficult it was. Those Knicks were bounce here or bounce there, and the Knicks would have been there. Indiana could have been there, So being there in those moments, the Garden is a special place, always has been. It was really fun for me to do that, and hopefully, Brooklyn's going to make some noise soon. For me personally, I have a lot of interest and vested interest in a couple of those guys, and a lot of friends over in Brooklyn now. Yeah. So I'm really looking forward to getting back to those big games.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, well, it's been a pleasure to have both you gentlemen join me today. It's been great to have a chance to speak with you both. Your collective experience is just astonishing between you over the decades, so it's been a real thrill. And I'll make sure I include links to both your respective Instagram accounts where you've been sharing some wonderful photos, particularly during this pandemic we're living through. Please stay safe as we try and work our way through this. And just one last time, thanks again for chatting with me today, to both of you, Andy and Nat.
No, thanks for having us, Adam. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks, Adam. Great to see you, man.
Thanks for listening. I welcome your interaction with the show. You can suggest topics or guests you want to hear conversations with. Send me an email. Audio clips are welcome. inallairness@gmail.com. Worldwide, the show has upwards of 160 ratings on Apple Podcasts with an average of 4.5 stars, with almost 90 reviews across all providers. Thanks for your continued support. If you add a review, I'd love to read it out on a future episode. Your ratings and reviews are one of the best ways to support the podcast. If you enjoy the show, please tell your basketball-loving friends about it. And as I do love to say, your word-of-mouth recommendations are worth their weight in gold. Stay up to date and subscribe to my monthly email newsletter. You'll receive exclusive details on upcoming podcast episodes, future high-profile guests to appear on the show, and plenty more. Simply email me inallairness@gmail.com. You can subscribe to my show in various ways. Search for In All Airness, 3 words, on your podcast app of choice. The show is on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Overcast, Android, and more. Thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed the show, and share my web address with your friends and colleagues, inallairness.com. Check out the podcast archive for plenty more episodes with high-profile guests. Follow me on Twitter @inallairness. Please add your like to the show's social hub, facebook.com/inallairness. Join me next time for another edition of the show.